Thank you, everybody. It is really a pleasure to present this project to you tonight because it's really fulfilling one of the missions of the School of Biomedical Engineering at life-saving solutions. And I will talk about the science and the technology background of this project and let Dr. Becerra to talk about all the clinical experience with the system, and of course his own experience. The technology for the basic science behind this project was developed by Penn and Baylor universities by a physicist out of Penn, Dr. Britton Chance, and a neurosurgeon out of Baylor University, Dr. Claudia Robertson. And together with the School of Biomedical Engineering, we formed a company that will actually do the push from bench to bedside and actually create a usable clinical device. We are part of the optical imaging group that researches the more higher order and more complex technology of imaging of the brain using near-infrared. And infrascan is really one of the lower hanging fruits of this technology that is looking on bleeding in the brain. A little about his history of what does it mean to bring a product from successful research to commercialization. We started in order to start something, we first start with a business plan, and we developed that and won the Wharton Business Plan competition, which gave the boost to create the company. But in addition to developing the product and gaining different awards, such the Excellence in Design Award and eventually the CE mark, we worked on funding the project and work with many different partners, starting like many other people coming out of university by submitting grants. And in this case, most of the money came from SBIR grants from Office of Naval Research, a little from the Army and from the NIH. And today we started already working with the Marine Corps toward implementation in the field of the technology. And we were also lucky that Economic Developing Agency operating in Philadelphia all supported the project, starting with BioAdvance, then Ben Franklin Technology Partners, and Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation. So it was really a partnership between a lot of Philadelphia organizations to move this project. A little bit about the science and the technology behind the project. We're working in the near-infrared. It's a range, the spectral range, where light can penetrate quite deep into tissues. In the near-infrared, we are not as opaque as we seem in the visible. And in this range, there are two dominating processes, scattering and absorption. And basically, when you shine light into tissue, it is scattered in all directions. And if you put a sensor a couple of centimeters away from the source, you can detect some of the light that went into the tissue was scattered and eventually was scattered outside. So you can really look deeper into the tissue. And we're looking at the near-infrared spectrum, and in this region, the most dominant absorber is blood, oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood, and they have different absorption spectrum. Very famous medical technology called pulse oximetry is using those properties and is able to measure the actual oxygen saturation in the tissue based on a couple of wavelengths in this area. In our case, we were looking really just on whether there is blood in the tissue or not, so we were working at the 805 nanometer. We just look at the absolute amount of blood in the tissue. And the way that we're detecting bleeding in the head is we're using the fact that the brain is symmetric. So by measuring absorption of light on the left and the right side of the head, we're able to detect the symmetry. And to give you an order of magnitude, when there is a hematoma, the local concentration of blood is 1,000% higher than in healthy tissue. So it's a huge difference between healthy tissue and the one that has bleeding, because in the bleeding, basically, blood fills all the void, and in healthy tissue, the blood is contained only in blood vessels. So blood, unlike cancer tumor, is a liquid. So when there is a hematoma, it basically spreads all over, but there are membranes in the brain that limit the flow of blood. So even if you have bleeding at what location, it will not cover the whole head, but will limited by membranes. So there are basically 4 main lobes of the head, and those are the locations that we're measuring: frontal, temporal, occipital, and parietal. 4 on the left, 4 on the right. So we're measuring 8 points on the head in order to detect whether there is a bleeding. Like any good engineers, we toyed with the technology, build a lot of prototypes, models. The first system that was used to prove the concept was connected by a wire to a box that had a lot of knobs and a lot of dials, displays, very sophisticated, very nice, but in that study, only one doctor succeeded to actually use that because it was really very complex to use. So we went toward developing the product. We went to simplify that and make it much more friendly, built it through different generations. Since, unfortunately, we're dealing with technology that needs to work with humans, whenever you put something engineering on a human, it never works the way you plan. And I think this is true for any aspect in the biomedical engineering. So we're doing a couple of cycles of building something, trying it clinically, seeing that it doesn't work, learning what were the mistakes, again, fixing it, building a improved version, going again, measuring, and again. And after a couple of cycles, we succeeded to get to a very nicely working system. So eventually, we have a sensor that scans the head, and the scan consists basically of measuring on those 4 locations, on the left, 4 locations on the right. And at each location, it's about 5 to 10 seconds. And moving from place to place, basically full head scan takes about 2 minutes. Sometimes you need to repeat, but it is pretty quick procedure to measure the full head. In the end, when you completed the scan, the system calculates a difference in optical density between left and right, which is log base 10 of the ratio of the measured signals. And when this difference is more than a certain threshold, we declare that there is a hematoma. So it is pretty simple. All the data is stored on a PDA that is controlling the system, and the data, of course, can be downloaded, so all the engineers and us can play with the data. The display of the system basically gives rough localization, and the number is indication of how big is this hematoma. This is a photograph of a real case where on the background you can see a CT scan image that shows a big frontal hematoma and shows the correct side of the head, and the infrascanner image, which shows where the hematoma is located and the fact that it is located there. And like any new technology, we are trying to go further with the development and are working on, instead of having a PDA that communicates with the sensor through Bluetooth, we are trying to put both of them together. And since we're working, our main emphasis is toward the military, we're also working on making the system much more ruggedized. So that was a brief overview of the technology and the project. And now I'll give the floor to Dr. Becerra.
I'd like to tell you a little bit about Dr. Becerra. He has such an amazing career. As I mentioned to you, he's currently stationed in San Diego, and he received his MD degree from Universidad Javeriana, School of Medicine, Santa Fe de Bogota, in Colombia. He then conducted his residency in neurosurgery and orthopedic surgery in Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, in anesthesiology and dermatology in Yale University in New Haven, in neurosurgery in Temple University in Philadelphia. So You have some background. Welcome back to Philadelphia. And then he continued to do neurology in Pennsylvania Hospital in Philadelphia. He did also a fellowship in neuro-ophthalmology in Wills-Eye Hospital, again here, and in operational medicine in the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery of the U.S. Navy. In addition to his medical career, Dr. Becerra served in various positions and worldwide locations for the U.S. Navy and Marines, and recently completed a 6-month service in Iraq.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. First of all, I am delighted to be back in Philadelphia. It's home. I'm a neurologist, and I train as a neuro-ophthalmologist. And what I do for the Navy right now is operational medicine. So it took me a long time to find a good job with the Navy. And a good job with the Navy is working with the Marines. So I have been with the Marines for 5 years, and probably I will retire from this. Again, I want to acknowledge Dr. McGowan, who is a former captain, always a captain in the Navy. He introduced me to Dr. Bendor and to the project. And a little history about why I'm interested in head injury. I came to the United States back in the 80s, late 90s, late 70s, early 80s, spoke no English. So for about a year, I killed cats at Bailey. I induced head injury in cats. Basically what I did is I produced brain swelling in order to test medications for brain swelling. That's what I did. That introduced me to the world of head injury, which has been very helpful to me in the Navy. I have been in the Navy for 21 years now. And the number of head injuries that you see in the Navy is similar to the number of head injuries that you see in the industrial world, because the Navy is such a big entity. It's an industrial entity. People are always in ships, always in warehouses, always moving things around. People get injured often doing that, and anyone who wears a helmet for a purpose. So anyone who wears a helmet is at risk of a head injury. Okay. My youngest son, who is a Philadelphian, he is the captain of the lacrosse team at UCLA, big guy. They always celebrate with the helmets off. There's magnet cells in the head, they lose consciousness, and then you're worried, is this person going to have a permanent brain injury? So head injury is very important to me. I continue my interest with head injury as a neurologist with the Navy. I was the principal investigator for something called the Defense Department and the Veterans Administration Head Injury Project that became the Head Injury Center. And I had maintained some connection through the years with this. I was watching a video, BBC video, about this fantastic device that the U.S. military was interested in deploying to the field. And I was going to the field, I was going to Iraq, and said, why don't I have one of those things? Turned to you because it's in the process of being FDA approved. I called Dr. Bendor, and he kindly went over to San Diego with the device, and I took that device to Iraq. And it's a device that saved the life of a couple of people. There's a significant number of people in my book. So I think it's a very useful device. I think it's a historical moment for this device and for you, because probably you are familiar with the defibrillators. Have you seen the defibrillators in the planes, and the mall, in the buses? So defibrillators are available everywhere because, hey, you have a heart attack, you want to have that immediately. You want to be that you are a boxer, or you are someone who practices contact sports, or you are in a car accident, or if you are unfortunate to fall down and hit your head, you are at risk of dying from that. It could be something very mild, but people die from head injury. So it's not unusual that we worry about head injury in combat, because unfortunately we have protected every single other area of the body because we cover it with Kevlar. But if you cover someone's head with Kevlar, there's no way to get a good soldier to function. So head injuries are significant in war. But this, although it's a presentation about my experiences in the field, coming back from war, I want you to remember that this device is going to be needed at the side bench of the football coach, the glove compartment of the patrolman, in the car of the firefighter, in any place where someone walking out of the situation which they could have been exposed to head injury can be useful. Okay. So let me talk a little bit about what happened in Iraq with this device. How do I advance? I am a little bit frustrated because I am from the 50s. I am 55 years old. So I said, my God, 21st century, I'm going to be living in Mars, no gravity, traveling through space. Remember the Jacksons? You remember the Jacksons, guys? Didn't happen. This is from a Star, probably for you guys, this is historical, okay? But this is the first Star Trek, okay? And that is Dr. Bonds coming to the rescue of Mr. Chekhov, who was in San Francisco. He fell through the deck, has a head injury, and they are ready to do brain injury on Mr. Chekhov. And here comes Dr. Bonds with Captain Kerr into the operating room and stop everything, and he flips on the tricorder and start making bombs and stuff and fix the problem. So I said, I had to get one of those things. And that's essentially what the device looks like. So that is the primary reason why I took it to Iraq. But it's fortunate that I took it to Iraq because you can find those pens there. This is a blood clot, and this is a head without the blood clot. And something as simple as those two pieces of equipment can save someone's life. Now, as me in the picture, that thing that is hanging from my shoulder is a weapon, because when you are in a war zone, you have to carry a weapon to protect yourself and to protect the people that you are taking care of. Now, I have tremendous amount of respect for the corpsmen of the Navy, which are the medics of the Navy. Unique. Because these guys not only had to wear the uniform of the Marine Corps, but they had to behave like Marines, they look like Marines, they carry weapons like Marines, they fight with Marines, but they are the medics. So they had to carry all that equipment and their medical equipment. And every time there is a you go to the movies, you have seen Black Hood Down. The first thing that happened is they call the corpsman. Corpsman up. The fins are flying and the fins are chaotic. Someone is down, they call the corpsman, and the corpsman has to go because that's his job. So I have a lot of respect for those guys. And I think that a device like this in their hands could save many, many more lives. So what happened to a person that had trauma to the head? Two things can happen. They can sustain a primary brain injury. In other words, the mechanical forces applied to the head are going to destroy nerve cells. So someone after a head injury may develop epilepsy. Someone who has been unconscious after head injury is at high risk for epilepsy for about 5 years. So it's important to remember that the brain is a very sensitive tissue. Unfortunately, there was a misconception about the brain, that the brain comes with certain number of cells and we are going to have to live with those cells until the very end and that's it. Okay, that's not the case. Okay, there are some areas of the brain that continue to function, and that's the reason why people, after a significant amount of damage to the brain, either head injury or a stroke or surgery for cancer, they recover some function because the brain has the ability to rehook, rearrange, plasticity, and will work again. So primary brain injury is very bad because you will lose some brain cells, and unfortunately, as a result of the damage to those brain cells, some function will be lost. Turn out to be that is going to be the signature injury of this war. About 1.6 million of Marines, sailors, airmen have deployed to Iraq, and about 1 in 10 has been exposed to a blast, has been exposed to an IED. They are the walking wounded. They are never complaining or I want to go to medical. They don't do that. They continue to function because they have a job to do. They don't want to look down. They don't want to be looked down by others. They want to continue to pull their weight. They are team players. But unfortunately, when they come back, they are not the same. They are not the same at home. They have difficulty with depression. They have difficulty with performance. Some of them are reservists. They go back to the real world. They cannot find a job. The wife doesn't want them anymore. They get divorced. They get depressed. And they spiral down. And they finally, oh yeah, I was in Iraq. Yeah, I was exposed to a blast. Yeah, I wasn't unconscious, but I didn't feel quite right after that. And then you do an MRI on them, and they have diffuse axonal injury. In other words, some of the electrical connections of the neurons have been permanently damaged, and they are going to be living with a permanent deficit. So this is what Congress and the military and everything is trying to look at, those people that are going to be in need of medical care in the future. We are not talking about those. This device is not for people like that. This device is for people that have secondary brain injury. So you have cell damage, there is nothing you can do. It said hope that there are enough connections or enough reserves that your brain could rewire and function will come back so you can regain your employment. It's so serious that the DoD and the Veterans Administration have reshuffled the criteria. Before, in order to have the diagnosis of concussion, you needed to have someone who was hit on the head, and on top of that was unconscious for a certain period of time, and record after minutes or hours, okay? Not anymore. So alteration of conscience is sufficient for you to have this diagnosis of traumatic brain injury. You think that is silly, but it's not that silly, especially when your livelihood may depend on that. Being able to go into the VA system and claim benefits, that is important. And this is something that is important. I think that I was here for Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and I remember taking care for years of people with the so-called Cold War syndrome. I used to call it the so-called World War syndrome because we thought it was a fictitious disorder. We thought there were people trying to get some benefits. Not to be that you were there, you were part of 1.6 million people that were required to deploy there and 850,000 people that actually were there. Hey, something could have happened. So basically someone said, yeah, something happened. And they classified this cold syndrome and they decided to give some benefits to these people. That is what we are trying to do here with this mild traumatic brain injury. Again, I'm not going to talk about that anymore because I want to focus on now secondary brain injury. So if you have one of this, something is bleeding inside your head, you may die. And you may die fairly quickly. And it's important to do something about it. If you have brain swelling as a result of either cell damage or an expanding hematoma, it's very bad. It's a complication of that. But regardless, there's nothing you can do but to live with it and hope that it's going to be minimal and hope that it's amenable to medical treatment. And by then, hopefully you will be in a neuro ICU and you will be essentially given all the possible benefits of survival. But if you don't take care of this one, you don't identify this early, and you do something about that early, then the window will be lost. And then we'll have that. And we don't have that. So we're going to focus on why this device is important for this identification of this condition, and how can it help someone in the field, not necessarily the battlefield, but the field in general, and you can say the football field, or the baseball field, or the boxing ring, or whatever, skiing down the slopes. Anything that requires a helmet. These are the statistics for Iraq. Now, this is the statistics for the year 2006. Have been revised a little. In April, the numbers will come out. It's about the same. 20% of killing action are preventable. And of those, 20% are still head injuries. Now, those are Iraq statistics. A relatively flat country with relatively significant number of hospitals, not necessarily military hospitals, but facilities, doctors trained in the United States, medical clinics, and stuff like that. So that is Iraq. I don't want to imagine how this is going to be in Afghanistan, a country that is not flat, that has a lot of hills and a lot of tiny villages with no clinics. It will be different. Wounded in action, 20% are head injuries, and of this, 40% have clots inside the head. In Baylor, Dr. Robertson conducted this study of the device between 90 and move over here to the side here. Easier. I'm going to read between 92 and 94. And basically what they're trying to figure out is this device useful? Is this device going to help to identify people that require brain surgery? Okay, they are brain surgeons. So I did spend significant amount in neurosurgery, so I am not going to speak about brain surgeons, but the business of brain surgeons is do brain surgery. It's something for the neurologist to take care of. So basically they needed to figure out if the gold standard, which is the CAT scan, was going to compare to this device. Was going to give the same information, was going to provide information that was at least comparable, or it wasn't. And because, again, it's a device designed to detect blood, I see it as the pulse oximetry of the head. Okay, pulse oximetry is becoming the sixth vital sign. You go to the doctor, they check your temperature, they check your blood pressure, your respirations, and then pulse oximetry is another vital sign. So this is like a huge pulse oximetry, the pulse oximetry of the head. So it works acutely. If you have a blood clot, blood inside a tissue, it's going to behave as blood for the first 72 hours. After 72 hours, that blood clot is going to be reabsorbed into something else. And that was the first puzzle that they have, that after 72 hours, the device wasn't as good as the CAT scan. So immediately they realized that this is not a device that is going to replace the CAT scan. It's not. But it's so easy to handle, it's so useful that can complement the CAT scan. So that was a major step. And the second step is we need to use it acutely within those first 72 hours before the blood clots change into something else. Because if we wait, the device doesn't really work very well. Now, an important observation is the last one, which in those people that initially have a normal CAT scan that later are going to have a blood clot, the device was so sensitive that even before the CAT scan became abnormal, the device was already telling you that there was something there for you to worry about. So that is very significant, very sensitive. The sensitivity of this device is very high. So the result of that preliminary study was that the infrascanner identified 100% of the traumatic extracellular hematoma, and of the population that they have, 19% of the patients developed a hematoma late. Of those, over 50% show this anomaly before the CAT scan was actually positive. And I think the most important part is that there were no false positives. So they moved from this study by Dr. Robertson to a multi-center study that involved the University of Pennsylvania, the University of Cincinnati, the Drexel College of Medicine, and the Sion Hospital in Mumbai, India. Dr. Sharma is a former head of neurosurgery in Houston, very distinguished neurosurgeon. And India is one of those places where head injuries are very frequent. I don't know if you have had the opportunity to be to India or see movies about India. They rely a lot in the train as a transportation system. They rely a lot in vehicles in which they pack a lot of people. So it's very often seeing people falling on those or being run over by trains and stuff like that. So, hey, perfect place for this device to be used first. All the CAT scans that were positive, they were analyzed then at Hopkins. The conclusion of this multi-center study was that this device was great for hematomas that were 3.5 cc's in volume. There is something called brain compliance. Have you heard that term before, brain compliance? You can apply pressure to the brain. The brain is yellow, traveling inside a fixed box. The box isn't going to give. So the brain is the one that's being squashed. So you can squash on the brain after a certain point, at which time, if you squash a little bit more, the pressure is going to go sky high and someone is going to be unconscious. It's like filling a glass with a dropper. It's going to take a long time to fill the glass, but the last drop, everything spills over. That is what brain compliance is. So basically, neurosurgeons, they don't operate on this. They don't operate in tiny little blood clots, okay? We are talking about a blood clot that is about the size of the content of the teaspoon. They don't do that. They observe those. If the blood clot gets bigger, they go for the surgery. So obviously, this is a very sensitive thing. Certainly, the brain is thick. So this light isn't going to travel all the way across. So it has to have some limits. So the blood clot has to be less than 2.5 centimeters from the surface of the brain. That is important for the purpose of this device, which is the brain hematoma detector. That's what it should be marketed as, the brain hematoma detector, for the purpose of detecting brain hematoma. I am the principal investigator for the Walter Reed project that deals with the infrared light in the diagnosis of people that have brain swelling after a stroke and all that. So it's the machine with the dials, okay? Very complicated, complete different type of approach to the diagnosis of an acute hematoma. And again, so for the purpose of detecting brain clots, this device works. the summary of this is 362 patients, 268 classified as having no hematomas. The sensitivity of the machines, 90%. The specificity, 91%. So basically, this is a great machine to try to figure out if someone has a blood clot, period. If someone has a significant head injury, they have a large collection of blood under the skull, they have bleeding coming from his head, by definition, they have a head injury. They are not candidates for this. Those people should go to the hospital to get a CAT scan and see a neurosurgeon immediately. This is for the person that doesn't have that, in which you want to be absolutely certain that nothing is there. Camp Fallujah. Back in 2004, my predecessor was outside the place where I worked for 7 months, 12 days. And he was in the SATFON. A rocket landed on top of him, and he died. And he died with the people around him. So that was a very dangerous place to be. Last year I was there. It wasn't like that. It was different. Most people didn't recognize it. They commented that things are better. And as you can see in the news, Anbar province is now back to the Iraqis. Fallujah, as I knew it, doesn't exist anymore. The base was turned over to the Iraqis. But still, the Iraqis are dealing with the problem of their own insurgency. So not uncommonly, you will have the boy coming to say hello to his uncle to the police station and blowing himself up with his uncle and everyone else in the police station. So we had to take care of the Iraqis because we were there, and we did that. Now, most commonly, we took care of the interpreters or the family of the interpreters or people that require some assistance because of being that, our people. Now, that one is a Marine. I don't know his rank, but certainly we don't have Marine female corpsmen going to the field. So obviously I know that by looking at the picture. She has the emblem of the Marine Corps, so she's a Marine. And every time that you see a female there, you need to see a female in the presence of another female. Preferably, they want to be seen by a female doctor. It's part of the culture. But they were very grateful for the services, and it was very rewarding to be able to provide some services to them. Now, we didn't see a lot of the Iraqis with head injury, except people in the security services, because of what I just told you. So they were the policemen or the people that were enforcing security, and they were the ones that were exposed to IEDs or blown out in one of these explosions. And we took care of the children a lot, because all of our older relations missions entitled to go to medical centers and see children, and they were really cool. They had to be careful. They will be going through your pockets in about 2 minutes, very fast. 2 seconds. So in order to introduce this, I requested a device from Dr. Bendor. I flew into Fallujah in January. And it was my personal interest. I am not speaking on behalf of the Marine Corps or on behalf of the Navy. I am speaking on behalf of Dr. Becerra, the doctor practicing operational medicine. So when I got to Iraq, although I am a very sophisticated specialist and a super specialist, I was an operational doctor providing primary care. So I work as an emergency room doctor. That's what I did. And I was assigned to a level 3 facility, which is a facility that has an emergency room, an operating room, as orthopedic surgeon and anesthesiologist. And I wanted to know how medical people will use this device. And they did. It was very easy to operate. So I said, okay, it's so simple. Let's see who else can do it. So I went to the corpsman. Very simple. So I said, oh, this is simple. Who are the people who take care of everyone coming into the shock trauma platoon, the facility? The Marines outside, the guards. So what I did is I gave the device to the guards. The lowest people in the totem pole, very dangerous job because they had to be certain that people coming into the facility didn't carry weapons or didn't have explosives or didn't go into damage something. And they were actually the people that did the testing. So it was very simple to train them to do it. So obviously simple to use. Initially, as I said, these examinations were done when requested by the clinicians, that actually became fun to assess this. Okay, about 40% of what we saw there at that level of care were people exposed to blasts, people that had come with Kevlar and all that, but all muddy, eye protection, but all muddy, some of them bloody. But the bottom line, no significant brain injury, so 40%. So why don't assess everyone? And we did that, regardless of the normal group. And because we were having so much fun, we repeat this test in the same person several times. The same individuals, we repeated the test several times. The more we repeat the test, the better we got with this, especially these young Marines taking care of security. Certainly, the device is in the process of FDA approval, and we did publicize the fact that it's not something that we were going to take to Iraq to get it FDA approved. We took it to see it work. And we needed to have someone to say it was okay to use it. So the general in charge of the multinational forces said, yeah, I think that this is okay. This is like the same type of energy used in our control remotes is already used in the pulse oximetry. It isn't going to harm anyone, and it could provide information. Why not? So on his authority, we were able to use it. I think that was a unique time in history. I was assigned to the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force at the time. So it was easy to go straight to the general and said, can I use it? And he said, yes. Now, this is where Fallujah is located. Al-Fallujah is the city of mosque. Okay? You don't see it here, but there are a bunch of underground rivers. This is the spot with Abraham made a left. So he came all the way from Basra and decided to make a left through the desert and went to Israel. Okay? So he didn't do it with good reasons. There are beautiful places there. There are lakes. It's just a fantastic place. It's the desert too. It's very dangerous because it's full of Iraqis. So the bottom line is that this is a very at the time was a very fortified place. We're about 10,000 people there, and right next to us was a base of the Iraqis, about 20,000 people. It was impossible to move around there without going to a lot of security perimeters and stuff. So you have a person coming here, and you were really afraid that that person was in danger of dying. You need to get this person quickly to this place called Balad. This is the desert, okay? So there is no straight line there. You have to go through here and drive through there. This can take hours. This is not that far. This place is only 45 miles away from here. But this 45 miles can take like 6 hours when you are under security precautions and stuff like that. So obviously, we didn't do that. We asked for medevac, air missions to try to move our patients quickly. Helicopters are expensive, and they carry people to operate them, so we had to be very careful with those missions because we don't want to lose them. So we only call them when there is absolutely necessary need to move someone around. The only 2 CAT scanners were in Baghdad, inside the green zone, or in Balad, which is a large Air Force facility. There is a very old Air Force base that Saddam Hussein built, and that is like our scale from here to Balad. It's about 12, 14 minutes. From Balad to Lonstal in Germany is about 6. So we had these huge planes that are ready to take people who are very sick to Germany. So, but they are the busiest emergency room in the world. Before we sent our corpsmen to war, before I went to war, they sent me to LA County Hospital. The LA County Hospital in Los Angeles is the busiest hospital in the United States. It's a place where people drive by. It's like going to McDonald's and punch the button and order something. They drive by, punch something, throw the patient, and keep driving. That's what they do in Los Angeles. So before we go to war, we get rid of the shock and awe by going to this place. That place is busier. There, they have a button in the other side of the Euphrates River. They punch it because there is someone dying in the street. You have to send someone to pick it up, bring it over. So it's very, very bad. We take care of a lot of Iraqis there. So very big hospital, has neurosurgeons. Again, in order to send someone over there, you have to ask for an air mission. So in my period there in Fallujah, we over 100 Marines, close to 150, with close-head injury and concussion were evaluated with this device. 90 soldiers have the so-called mild traumatic brain injury. Our walking wounded, you ask them, are you okay? Oh, I'm fine. Count to 20. Ooh. Count backwards to 10. Ooh. So you know you have to do something about it. 1 dozen of them have exposure to ID blasts and were referred for CT scan. So if you have a serious injury, the device is good to have as a tool to know how fast you have to move with the patient. It's not that you're going to rely on the device only. You have serious injury, you want to have the gold standard, which is the CAT scan. 3 positive cases were air evac. And I will talk a little bit about these cases for your information. Unfortunately, I was unable to get the comparison x-rays. They are in our system. You can see it in our computers, but I haven't figured out a way to copy them. Some are in Balad, some are in Bristol. This gentleman, an older gentleman, a contractor. This an Iraqi policeman, and this a Marine. This gentleman went to R&R. Okay, we have all these contractors in Iraq, thousands of them, and they live in the bases, and they essentially get all their services from the bases, including medical services. This gentleman came back to Fallujah. I'd been in Fallujah before for about 12 months. Unbeknownst to everyone, he was an alcoholic, and he was able to provide himself with alcohol, and he continued his consumption. He came from 2 weeks of having a good binge and have a withdrawal. He became a little bit confused in the plane. He didn't want to wear the helmet, and on the landing, he bumped his head against the bulkhead. Not very old, in his early 60s, and fairly big guy. Came to at the time our facility was a level 3. So in other words, we had surgeons and everything else there. And was seen by an emergency room doctor who stood, says, "Oh, this is an alcoholic. Let me give him whatever we do to alcoholics and see how well he does." And he did well with that. And the suspicion was raised that he had a problem with alcohol, etc., and that's the reason why he doesn't look okay. However, later on, we continued to assess. And this wasn't me doing it. This was the guard doing it. He said, "Oh, we have the little gizmo here." So he started playing with this, and he said, "Dr. Becerra, come back, because this is now showing a red spot." This is a guy, a 19-year-old guard. He's not a doctor. He's not a corpsman. So I said, "Oh, let me go." He said, "It's probably you are doing it wrong." I was surprised because I said, "I don't think that there are false positives with this. I almost called you." But the bottom line is, I did it. It was positive. I got the doctor's house. I said, "Let's do it. It's positive." What we're going to do about it is there is a sandstorm. We cannot ask for anything. We'll put him, drop a 9-line, and 9-line means you have someone ready to go. You put that in the system, immediately they move and they send a helo or whatever. So we didn't do that because he was only one spot and he looked okay. His Glasgow Coma scale hasn't changed. When he changed to 2 spots, then we changed our mind and said, okay, better for him to go and have the CAT scan right now. He went over, and that is the picture that you saw, the person with that large blood clot being evacuated from the head. So he had bilateral subdural hydromas, has his brain surgery, and that weekend they asked me to go over with the infrascanner to demonstrate it to the Army guys, because the Balad base has a combination of Army, Air Force, and there was a mental health conference, so I came over with the thing. And then I went to the hospital and said, "Oh, is that guy still here?" "Yeah, he's going to Germany," and I redid the test. So I have the normal becoming abnormal, very abnormal, brain surgery, and the negative test. So I said, that made me a believer. I believe in this device. Okay, again, no hematoma after he had brain surgery. The Iraqi policeman was exposed to an IV blast. His Glasgow scale was 13 on admission. He went to Medical City where he had brain surgery. Medical City, our places there are big. Our places are 20 to 40,000 people, so they are called cities. Our bases are huge. So he got there, had brain surgery, and we lost track of whatever happened to him. The young Marine had a small hematoma. He was observed. Obviously, you have a brain hematoma, you are not going to be left in Iraq. So he went on to Germany, where they repeat the CAT scan. The hematoma was still there. He was okay. He was sent back to San Diego. This is the way that our facility used to look like. We have a couple of trauma rooms, and these are our treatment rooms. And what we did there is to try to assess people as quickly as we can, and within the first hour, to decide who needed to go to a higher level care, because that is essentially the golden hour to move people along the system. What this device did for us is help us to identify people that really didn't need to be there, that needed to be under the care of a specialist. What I envision this device to do is to be available to anyone. If I'm going to be a dad again soon, so if my boy is going to play football, I want to have one of these fans, okay? Because I want to be certain that he can go home. I ask permission to disclose this to you. I have been asked to consult in a case. It's a legal consultation, so I cannot talk too much about the specifics, but you will see it in the news. It was an ABC News. It's a boy from San Marcos. He was playing football 18 months ago. Good player. Was hit on the head. Was unconscious in the field. But he regained consciousness, like they do here in the games, okay? Someone is unconscious in the field, people wait and see what happened. Okay, which sounds kind of silly. Someone may die there waiting. This boy did, like most people do, the lucid interval. So got up, took the ovation, sat down right next to the coach. He wasn't feeling well, but he didn't want to go because he didn't want to let his teammates down. The moms keep saying to the coach, "He doesn't look good." And he should listen because moms know. And the bottom line is that he actually passed out, became unconscious. The paramedics that were there had said to him, or to the mother, "No, we are not going to take him anywhere because he looks good, and we only go to the hospital in case of emergency." He came an emergency. Several minutes later, intubated, got to the hospital where the neurosurgeon said, "Ooh, I'm sorry, you're here. It'll be a little too late. You could have been here 10 minutes before. We could have done something about it." He survived. He survived the surgery, brain damage after the surgery, 9 months of rehabilitation. Unfortunately, have a bad outcome of the rehabilitation. Something happened. Something else happened. So he is now locked in. In other words, he only can communicate by blinking. That's about all he can do. And he is 17 years old. So I'm passing this information along because I feel that at some point there is going to be, by you, people who are young and now aware of this, some movement that says, "Hey, we would like to have this everywhere." It's great to have it in the medical field, but I envision this being available to you, so you can carry one in your purse. Let me assess your head injury. Okay, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure to read.
I was just wondering if this device has been tested on patients other than those with just known hematomas. For example, a large fluid-filled cyst, which can sometimes contain blood, with the potential for that replicating or giving some kind of a false positive for hematoma. Has that been investigated at all?
When you're running a large study, you always have different interesting cases. And as typical to any new technology, we're running first the study, get it approved. So the study we did were really focused on traumatic brain injury and not on different other aspects. But we know that there are many researchers that are interested in many other aspects, but I cannot say that we investigate already all the applications.
Well, I just meant that the large cysts represent potentially giving false positives. It's just something incidental.
As long as there is blood inside, yes. If it just a clear...
And that's one of the limitations of the device. You wouldn't call it that way. Okay, you have a large amount of blood collection. You have a large amount of blood collection. Why are you going to do this for? And if there is a lot of blood in the field by itself, it has to be wiped out and cleaned. It's very easy with Marines because Marines are like me. Are you flatter? I mean, God, so not a lot of hair. Someone like yourself, and we do have some ladies in which we have to do it. It is difficult. You have to. It comes with a comb, so you actually can wiggle yourself around the hair, but that is one of the technical limitations of that.
So that's a very interesting point, and we will probably come back to that.
Thank you. I want to just first thank you for sharing your experiences. I worked with the device at HUP when a CAT scanner was just yards away. So to hear you have literally a desert between you and a CAT scan machine. It's such a different such a different situation and just really fascinating. So thanks. My question is, you mentioned that you had some consultation with colleagues in the Army, and I was wondering what the future plans might be for use of the device in other branches of the armed forces and, Afghanistan or elsewhere, what your future...
Because I was assigned to the multinational, I was assigned to the headquarters group of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. So it's a Marine outfit, and Fallujah was a Marine outfit. The general who authorized this was a Marine general. Immediately that triggered his science and technology officer to look into the results of this. First of all, the safety, then the potential benefits, and then the results. So he has that. And that has been put forward through something called Marine Systems Command. So from the point of view of the Marine Corps, they are interested in this device. They would like to have it. And the stumbling block is the FDA approval. Once that happens, I am suspicious that they are going to continue moving forward. They have very strict doctrines. So once they decide to do something, get something, they get it. I cannot speak for the Army. The Army were interested, but this was an stress company. The psychiatrists, the psychologists, they call themselves a stress company. And they were interested, but they were mostly dealing with the post-traumatic stress associated with a head injury and other things. And they have their own interests in the field. They were testing devices that can be used as a virtual reality machines for people that have been exposed to combat and also other things. So that's as far as I know about the Army. I know from Dr. Bendor that the Air Force tried to get an IRB from the current commander in Balad and has been torn out. So it would be not unusual that this situation between forces happen. So I think that there is a little ingrown here by going into the Marine Corps and the potential that will pay off that way. I think it's a situation of cost. If you look at the money that ONR has invested on this, and ONR stands for Office of Naval Research, and the fact that in order to come out with a prototype, it's in the tens of thousands of dollars. Once this device is cheap, it would be very difficult to keep it away from people. CAT scan is still the gold standard, but a portable CAT scanner that doesn't give you really good images weigh like half a ton, and it still costs like $700,000. So a device that can cost only a few $1,000s that can be widely disseminated